In New York City, a serial killer is on the loose, specifically targeting gay men within the leather and BDSM scene, luring them into quiet places under the facade of providing sex before taking their lives. Steve Burns is a cop told to investigate the spree of murders, notified that he must remain undercover and tell nobody any details other than the police captain. Knowing only that the killer has a certain preferential type, coincidentally men who look like Steve with dark curly hair, Steve delves into the depths of the city's gay kink nightlife, searching for a killer but eventually revealing the violent corruption of his own police force, and just how far he's willing to go in uncovering his own repressed curiosity. This is William Friedkin's Cruising, a controversial yet reclaimed cult classic, embraced for its unflinching depiction of fringe gay nightlife. Stylized with an aesthetic deeply inspired by Jallo cinema, William Friedkin's film sits within an interesting contrast between problematic and provocative, utilizing stereotypes of the queer community to depict gay sex as a depravity with a heteronormative lens that views these acts as shocking, and yet also openly critical of the inherent queerphobia of police brutality, as well as the violently cyclical nature of the marginalisation of vulnerable communities. One of the most instantly recognisable aspects of Cruising is its visual style. The film, ultimately a serial killer mystery and thriller, borrows inspiration from the Italian slasher subgenre of films, Jallo. Jallo is often hyper-stylized, with an emphasis on vibrant lighting, often relying on a shock twist relating to the revelation of the central killer's identity. Cruising is often similar. The film is usually soaked in a vibrant deep blue, especially during outdoor night sequences. The central killer, while his face isn't completely hidden, is obscured just enough by sunglasses and leather that it makes it difficult to discern his true identity and motive, and many of the kills unfold drenched in shadows as the killer toys with his targets, amplifying both fear and tension. While it'd be a stretch to call Cruising a Jallo film completely, the inspiration is certainly there. Before delving into Cruising's critiques of corruption and marginalisation, first it's important to recognise the film's central controversies, as well as its eventual reclamation by LGBTQ+ cult cinema enthusiasts. Both the initial criticisms and the eventual reappraisal of the film are valid. During its production and initial release, Friedkin's film garnered controversy due to its portrayal of gay nightlife as inherently seedy. Ryan Adamczewski for LGBTQ+ magazine Advocate summarises the emotion surrounding the film by illuminating Cruising's lead actor's own thoughts on the movie, Al Pacino. The actor revealed that he was so uncomfortable with how the final cut of the movie portrayed LGBTQ+ people that he ended up anonymously donating his entire paycheck to various charities. Pacino said that he signed on to the production because he wanted to be part of a project that was pushing the envelope. However, the actor recalled that Cruising became very controversial during its production for its condemning portrayal of the queer community. The film drew protests from LGBTQ+ locals in New York City almost every day, even facing calls for a mass boycott among LGBTQ+ people at the time. The complaints and protests regarding the film are understandable. Cruising portrays the gay BDSM community as a hub of sleaze, and the act of BDSM and kink play is portrayed as if it's somehow non-consensual, when in actuality consent and safety are essential tenets within BDSM power play. Cruising's portrayal of gay nightlife isn't particularly flattering either, and it's understandable why Al Pacino would feel the production was exploitative if he had made a large sum of money on a story that many LGBTQ people at the time found insulting. However, over time, this controversy has subsided, and Cruising has been reclaimed as a queer cult classic. While the film isn't a flattering portrayal of gay nightlife, it does remain raw and unfiltered in its depiction of hard sex, acknowledging the communal ins and outs present at the time, from the discreet necessity of communication with the hanky code to acts of cruising for sex away from prying eyes due to the history of businesses expressing prejudice towards gay men, unlikely to rent rooms to them if they planned on hooking up. And the film even thoroughly embraces the aesthetic of leather kink, reminiscent to how it's depicted in classic Tom of Finland artworks, unflinching in the sucking, fucking and fisting of cop power fantasies and fascistic dom degradations. Furthermore, Cruising recognises the presence of trans women at the time. While not exactly a nuanced portrayal of trans women, Friedkin's film recognises that trans women face an intense marginalisation similar to gay people at the hands of abusive authoritarianism. When two trans women are harassed by a police officer to get in their car, initially the demand could be for intel from the streets, but eventually it is revealed by one of the women that the cops had sexually assaulted her, a serious allegation not treated with complete urgency due to the allegation coming from a trans woman of all people, a citizen deemed unworthy in the eyes of queerphobia and fascism. The allegation is probably true too, when considering how trans women are still more likely to face violent and sexual victimization than cisgender people, and that police officers have used the authority of the badge to coerce sex from their targets. This sexual assault of trans women is just one example of the inherent queerphobia of police brutality that nurtures the cyclical violence of marginalisation towards the LGBTQ+ community as explored within Cruising. Another example comes in the form of an initially questionable and increasingly traumatising interrogation scene. Steve, undercover, has led the police to a young suspect named Skip, and when Steve is brought out of the interrogation room, given a brief moment of respite, allowing to shift out of his undercover identity, the police officers interrogating Skip begin to threaten him, demanding and willing to coerce a confession from an innocent young gay man. The threats range from sexual humiliation to forcing him to provide a semen sample, an act of sexual violence. What exactly happens to Skip is left off screen, but the notion that these are the tactics used by these officers to interrogate a young gay man is a display of how police brutality can be inherently homophobic, physical abuse used as a tactic to keep marginalised people subservient to fascism. The whole ordeal is so grotesque that Steve himself questions whether he should even continue working undercover. Cruising concludes with a chilling revelation. With the suspected serial killer found and apprehended, unfortunately more killings of young gay men unfold. But whether the killer is caught or not becomes less relevant to the points that the film is making. The continued marginalisation of LGBTQ+ people and other vulnerable underrepresented groups of people means the encouragement of continuous violence and hatred. Compared with scenes of Steve's own self-reflection and insecurity regarding his own sexuality after going undercover in BDSM gay bars, a system of stigmatisation is firmly in place, either encouraging consequences of hatred resulting in further killings, or motivating one's own self-doubts and repression over their identity. Hate crimes are a result of the reaffirmation of marginalisation, as is the aspect of shame and insecurity, reinforcing the cyclical nature of prejudice. Whether the serial killer was or wasn't caught becomes irrelevant. Whether Steve became lost in the sauce as an undercover informant is also irrelevant, because it's the societal and internalised prejudice that still lives on. In conclusion, William Friedkin's Cruising is likely to remain a polarising title. It's not undeserving of its controversies, and yet it is also not undeserving of its reappraisal as a kinky queer cult classic. Stylish and suspenseful, full of commentary on the corruptibility of police brutality and the ongoing challenges of societal prejudices, Cruising even became an inspiration for the likes of Robert Mapplethorpe, a man whose immaculate body of work reflects the elegance and full-throttle sexuality reminiscent of this film. Whether we love it or loathe it, Cruising certainly earns its place within the pantheon of cult LGBTQ+ art. A special thank you to my incredible tier Patreon supporters Gil and Jared Spears of Concessions, as well as my super tier Patreon supporters Spodzilla and Audio KZ.